semen retention. Patrick, do you miss ejaculating during sex?
Good question, Laura. If I feel into it, no, not really, because I've become more aware of other sensations that are just as beautiful. But at the same time, I also have a lot of space for the times when I do ejaculate, and I really celebrate them because they're beautiful. And I think that's the thing about semen retention or the way that I do it, and I advocate doing it, is it's not like you're just saying goodbye to ejaculating forever and then banishing it away from, and then just becoming this person who never ejaculates. It's all about control. It's all about choosing when you want to ejaculate.
Yeah.
So I like to feel into it. And when I'm feeling that I really want to or really need to, and also that it's a beautiful experience for us when it's like some kind of special moment, then, I like to give that moment some ejaculation and just really enjoy it, celebrate it. But there are consequences to it, because then afterwards I find that I have to go through all the stuff, all the feelings that I get when I do ejaculate. And I find sometimes if I've gone a long time without it, the high can be really high and then the low can be really low.
Yeah, that's really good to hear that you're not actually missing it that much, because I find most men that come across the concept of semen retention, they're kind of shocked, about the idea that they wouldn't have, it's almost like taking the candy away from a kid. It's like, what? But that's the best part. Like, why would anyone ever not want to do that?
Yeah.
And I think, it's mainly because we have such a limited idea of male sexuality. It's like, porn gives us a script of what's pleasurable and what's desired by men that is so limited. It's like, there's this whole world out there that we can explore, right?
Yeah, it's like one way of doing things. Like the man can ejaculate, but it doesn't mean he has to. And that's the beautiful thing about it. And the man can have orgasms without ejaculating. But it does take some work. It does take a bit of practice.
Yeah.
I remember just reading that, ejaculation is basically for making babies.
Yeah.
And that's the incentive. That's why it feels so good, because as animals, we want to make babies in our DNA, whatever. You don't have to make a baby, but, it's kind of part of our evolutionary sequence.
Yeah, the primal drive.
Yeah, to have kids. And so that's why women get really, really horny during ovulation, because that's when they can conceive. And men have these quite reliable orgasms that can be achieved, if you think about it, in seconds.
Yeah.
So this is something to be marveled at, and it's pretty magnificent, the whole idea of being able to ejaculate and have an orgasm within I don't know, half a minute.
Yes. And create life.
And create life.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can do that, and the actual body is made to be able to do that quite a lot.
Yeah.
And that's quite remarkable.
But it's kind of I would say probably for us, 100% of the time, we're not trying to make a baby, right?
We're definitely not trying to make a baby.
Also evolved in a sense that we're operating from primal urges, but that's not our main agenda in life, right? We're not running around life acting on our primal drive.
Quite the opposite, really.
Mm-hmm. So I would really like to talk about what it feels like for a woman when a man is able to contain desire, because semen retention, you see a lot in the fitness world, and it's like, oh, lads, you're going to be more productive, you're going to be stronger, athletes, do it because they perform better. So it's still speaking to this performance part of masculinity, of being oh, you're just you, but stronger. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, great. Who doesn't want to be more productive, stronger, smarter, everything? But what I find really fascinating is how it changes the experience of lovemaking for women when their partner is able to contain their sexual energy in this way. And And it reminds me of this quote that I once read, which is, sorry for the author, I forgot her name. But it says a gentleman is a patient wolf. And it made me think of that moment where we were playing and we were in a lovemaking situation and there was no penetration yet. And I felt really relaxed and I felt really, there was no rush. There was just all this space and presence. And I asked you, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you want to penetrate me right now? And you said 10.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
That's a lot.
I had like my legs open and I was just like looking at you and I was like, wow, I don't feel that urge at all. I don't feel that from you. I don't feel that energy that like wants so badly, that is like on the edge of like, oh my God, I want this so badly because I'm so passionate. I felt the passion, but I didn't feel the pressure.
Yeah.
And that's what containment of sexual energy for a man is really about, right? Because sexual energy in men is like a fire. And for us women, we're more like water. We need our time to warm up, to meet that fire. And when we are playing with a man who's so able to relax into the desire, right? At the peak of desire of 10, I want to be inside you, right?
Yeah.
Like to just contain that energy. As a woman, our body feels it.
Yeah, and that's the safety. That's the safety element. And that's kind of where the power is as a man, to be able to feel it, not suppress it, but contain it.
Yeah, not suppress.
And that containing is really powerful because it's really bringing it up. It's bringing that energy that's kind of what is in your sex center and bringing it up to your heart and bringing it up to your head, to your crown. And this is essentially sublimation.
Yeah.
And it really taps into this sacred union because with that containment, I feel a real presence and I feel a real like an observer
Yeah.
in the situation, observing Shakti unraveling within pleasure and sensuality. And it's becomes that meditative state because it's very primal, but it's also very ethereal because I feel like time stands still. I'm watching something so beautiful, but at the same time I'm in control. And I really get a big kick off of this presence.
Yeah.
It's really arousing, but it's in a really subtle way. And I don't want to this might sound a bit weird, but it's very godlike.
Yeah.
It's very like, dong.
Dong above. Yeah.
And the pleasure is not like, the pleasure is really mature pleasure.
Yeah.
It's not like, it's hard to describe. It's not this sensation. It's not like licking your favorite ice cream pleasure. It's like, it's like putting work into something for years and then looking at your house that you've just built pleasure.
Yeah.
It's like super mature and like, wow, it's nice.
Yeah, because the desire itself is something that's actually really feared by a lot of cultures, right? It's the reason why religion is so suppressive of sexual energy and sexuality, because if this fire is not contained, it can be incredibly destructive and dangerous.
Yeah, that's why sexual abuse is so high, because that's uncontained fire.
And that's
mixed with power as well, of course, but yeah.
And that's what's so imprinted in the female body, right? As a woman, we have experienced uncontrolled male sexual desire and male sexual energy so many times, whether we were aware of it or not. Like if someone just looks at us in a certain way on public transport and our whole body coils in and we're like, ugh, this is disgusting. I feel so off, It's a moment where this male sexual desire is kind of like grabbing towards us energetically, and our body feels it, and it feels icky and it feels really unsafe, and it makes us shut down. So when we're with our partners and they love us to bits and they adore us and we have a beautiful relationship, but their sexual desire and their energy, it's not contained,
It's leaky.
It's like it takes over, basically. The desire takes over. Our female like bodies, they just know, like they just understand that danger and shut down. And then from our headspace, we're beating ourselves up like, oh, why am I shutting down with my husband? Why am I shutting down with my partner? It's like, well, because your animal body checks what's going on in this other animal body, and it makes you feel unsafe.
Yeah. And this comes into like the ravishing conversation, essentially.
Yeah.
And, it's for a guy, because I get this question a lot, how to ravish. And it's about that containment. But it's also about knowing when it is the right time, when there's enough safety, when your partner's fully surrendered and open, for you to release that desire, for you to release that primal desire. And that's when it's met and welcomed and received. And that is also unbelievably amazing.
When it's received, it's just the most beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Because for women, we desire to surrender. There's a part in us that does. And it's just something that is this big, big gift, because I cannot surrender by myself. That's like,
Yeah.
I can have all the pleasure and all the beauty and self-love and wonderful experiences by myself. But that level of surrender, if I give up my control to another human and I let them take me somewhere, I cannot achieve that by myself.
No, takes two to tango.
So it's very special.
And that's why the whole concept of this ravish is like, it's an interesting one, because in my perspective, it shouldn't really be sought after.
Yeah.
You should be ready for it. You should know, as a guy, you should know and feel when it's the right time, and we can get into when knowing that is. And if you feel like you want to go there, then go there when it's the right time.
Yeah.
But most of the time, let's just say 6 out of 10 times, it's probably not going to happen. And that's great. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. It's not like it's kind of been portrayed as this like, the best way to have sex.
Yeah.
But
it's like the goal, no, of like, if you're this like amazing lover, you know how to do this to women.
A man knows how to ravish his partner.
Where in reality, it's like a co-creation, right? I have to feel like that safety and that trust, and I have to be able to go into that place in my body, but also my nervous system, because I think, just speaking from my own experience as a woman, like when I go into this place where my body is fully open and I am surrendered, it's the level of trust it needs is almost like, it's very indescribable. It's like, that's when polarity, right, in the sense of like tantric polarity, really happens, because you are becoming like 10 times consciousness and I'm becoming just energy. So I don't really think anymore. I don't really have any like direction in my own being. I'm just, in that sense, surrendered, right? So I'm fully open and relaxed. And all I am occupied with is the sensation, like the feelings in my body, the pleasure, just the experience. I'm like 100% experience, and you're like mainly consciousness.
It feels great.
And that's like that ecstatic polarity where we're both in these opposite poles, and therefore there's so much sexual charge between us.
Yeah, it's really interesting as well. And from a guy's perspective, it's like, engaging in penetrative sex or any kind of intimacy when you have a lot of sexual charge, you're kind of like resisting ejaculation. You're trying to, pull it up. You're like not wanting to go there. You're feeling everything on the journey, but you're breathing up. You're trying to relax. If it's too intense, you're tensing up, breathing the energy up. So you're moving away from this ejaculation, essentially. But I find when you get into this stage where it's in that polarity state, in that ravishing state, with Shiva and Shakti, and I'm gone into more of my consciousness, I don't need to resist the climax anymore.
Yeah,
It's
almost like a plateau.
yeah, I kind of like elevate above it a little bit, and it's
Yeah.
more of like, yeah, this ethereal. It's I suppose a little bit less embodied and more in the head, in terms of I can still feel everything, but I feel that I'm observing so much and I'm aware of everything that I can just say I'm not gonna come, and I don't come.
Yeah.
And there's less of the physicality. It's less of the, the testicle breathing, the big draw, less of the Taoist practices, and more just like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's expansion, right?
And I'm not going to worry about it.
You're expanding in this consciousness realm, and I'm expanding into the energy realm, where I'm just like more intense feelings, and it plays off each other, right? The more intensity I feel in my body, of like the more pleasure, the more energy, also the more you're enjoying that state that you are in, right? So it's kind of just becomes more and more
it's
pleasurable.
it's the yin and the yang, really, because I'm essentially feeling, it feels great, don't get me wrong, but I'm feeling less of my bodily sensation and getting more pleasure in observing you have pleasure.
Yeah.
And that's the Shiva element of just marveling in the beauty of energy.
Yeah.
And witnessing it. And making it real by witnessing it.
So how did you get into doing this semen retention thing? Which is also, one comment, very different from stopping ejaculating. We are not doing that. I've talked to so many men recently, and they're like, oh yeah, I've been doing semen retention for years. I'm just not ejaculating. I'm like, so you're moving the energy up? Hell, what do you mean? So they have no clue about actually moving the energy up. And I wonder where this education comes from for men, thinking that semen retention means, oh, you just hold it in.
Yeah.
This is not what we're doing, guys.
Well, it's an approach.
So how did you get into it?
Got into it by really becoming aware of how ejaculation affects me, my body, and my mood. And
how does it affect you?
And just becoming more aware of how it affects me physically and how it affects me emotionally. So I would ejaculate more times than, let's just say twice a day or once a day, I don't know. And it would have, well, I wouldn't actually, that's way too much. It would probably be like once every, anyway, it doesn't really matter.
We had the situation, for example, in the Holland Tantra Festival, right, where there was a lot of like ejaculations close by another, and then you had had like an energetic experience from that.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to explain. So with a lot of ejaculations, it made me feel very depleted. It made me feel very lack of energy, really drained. And I also noticed that I started becoming, my immune system was a lot weaker. And I would often, if I was in a place where there was like, let's just say viruses going around, or like, there was a lurgy about, I would be feeling fine. Then I would ejaculate, and the next day I would just wake up sick.
Yeah.
And it would just completely wipe me out. And so there's a real physical element of it. And that's actually like the Taoist side of it. It's this physicality, it's this vitality that we kind of lose when we ejaculate, because we spend so much energy creating this sperm. And it takes away a lot of energy from our body, from other key organs that are there to help us live a more balanced life. But at the same time, I was also experiencing the tantric side of semen ejaculation, which was, I was noticing a real lack of connection, a real connection deficit once I ejaculated. And this would be translate into like connection with myself. So I'd begin to feel anxious, begin to feel like I didn't belong. To your example, when we were at the Tantra Festival and we made love loads and I ejaculated loads, and then we went to this training directly after, and I found it really hard to fit in. I thought I was like the lone wolf. I I felt really anxious about the connection. And I didn't really realize until I kind of put 1 and 2 together and yeah, connected the dots that it's because I depleted myself so much that my emotional balance was completely off, and I felt really, really, yeah, disconnected. And this is a big element why in Tantra people practice semen retention, because they notice for men that when you ejaculate, you often lose that connection with your partner. And this is just, yeah, I think every man has experienced this. Been with a partner, ejaculate, and then afterwards feel disconnection. And it's a little bit, yeah, it's not the greatest feeling in the world, because you go from such beautiful intimacy to yeah, I need a bit of space right now.
Yeah.
And so that's the tantric element, because they're all about connection. And if you don't ejaculate, you keep the connection. You have your intimacy, you finished your intimacy, and you're still cuddling and you're still very loved up.
Yeah. I would say it's really about love, right? Because if this desire peaks and it's almost like when the desire gets so strong that there's no containment, for example, love isn't as present anymore, because the primal urge is kind of stronger than that sweet heart-centeredness. So the movement of bringing this primal energy from the base, right, from the root chakra up, also enables a man to stay way more in their heart. So you can see that this force of desire in a way is fueling greater love, because you can look at me and you can be in this like real marvel, as you described it, and there's so much love there. And yeah, that reminds me also of you saying what you just said there. How was that? Oh yeah, the disconnection. There's also a lack of that quality of love, right? And it's kind of a cliche, but it's also very true that many women are more like opened up after lovemaking, and they feel still so close, and they're still in this heart-centeredness, and they want that physical connection as expression of their love for their partner. And yeah, for men, when the energy went down and out, it's not really, there's not much expansion in the heart anymore.
Yeah, and that's the key element, is to bring that energy, that really powerful, vital energy up to the heart. Because if you look at it in a individual state for a man, our positive sex pole is our sex center. And this is going into polarity, and it's looking more of a tantric perspective. And this, we're penetrating the world through our lingam, our penis. And this is our sex center. And this is really powerful and really just beautiful. It also can be very destructive, but let's just think about it in the power sense. And going up to our heart space, this is a negative pole for a man. And this is where we have a lot of issues with sadness, with grief, with depression, stuff like this. And so we have this powerful energy and we're releasing it. We're spilling it, essentially. We're getting it outside of our body. But the real essence is to move it up to our heart, move it up to our body, to keep this energy and to circulate this energy with love and feel it, to have a better relationship with ourselves, especially within the emotional balance. And I think this piece is really overlooked, because guys suffer from depression a lot. And guys, this suicide's the biggest killer of guys under 50.
Yeah.
And it's just a massive piece that I think needs to be recognized, is like we have all this vital energy that helps us feel connected, and we let it go, and it can make people feel a lot disconnected. And if we're able to move it up to our heart space and feel more, then this can really help people out into having a more emotional balance that's required to navigate this complex world.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
And that's just individuals. That's just a guy who lives by himself. You don't necessarily need to have a partner.
Yeah.
Because, if you don't have a partner and you're in a particular pattern with masturbation, and using masturbation and ejaculation as stress relief, then you're depleting yourself from a lot of energy that you could use to be feeling more self-assured, more confident, more able to, step into the world in a way that you want to.
Yeah, more loving. Yeah, this is really fascinating because also on just the hormone levels, right? Like it's very much an addiction in that sense where addiction is characterized by the drugs don't work anymore, right? It's kind of like
Yeah.
when we're really addicted to something, there is no real satisfaction happening anymore. There's no like, oh, wow, this was so beautiful. I don't need any of this for the next weeks because I'm so satisfied. That's not what we're experiencing when we're addicted. We're addicted in the sense the moment we get what we wanted, we want more. And yeah, we're in a place where, as you're saying, there's like a real big mental health challenge for men, obviously for women as well, but we're just focusing on men right now. And in so many men are in this really vicious cycle where they, there's men reaching out to me online that tell me they're ejaculating to porn 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And if you think about that addictive pattern and what kind of hormones and changes, neuroscientific changes happen in the brain, it's like pretty serious addiction.
Completely. And the drug's widely available and you can get it any time.
Yeah. So
And it's free.
It's free, yeah.
Unless you got to keep your internet balance paid. But,
Yeah.
there's 1,000 different drug dealers out there all selling 1,000 different drugs that all do the same thing with your brain in terms of dopamine.
Yeah.
And it's a vicious cycle. And this is new as well. This is new. This is like, 15 years new. And we're now, with science and our study of it, we're really catching up with the effects that it's having on males, and especially teenagers as well, because they're growing up with it.
Yeah.
Recent studies in the UK have shown that a large percentage of 13-year-old boys are now just accessing porn without any hindrance.
Yeah.
And so this is before any form of sexuality, any form of interaction with women has been formed.
Yeah.
And
My toes curl.
they're viewing things like, very violent sexual scenes.
Yeah.
And, once you get into it, it only gets worse in terms of what you're needing to scratch that itch.
Yeah.
In terms of this topic you're watching.
Yeah.
But this is going down the route of pornography, but I think it goes hand in hand because people who practice semen retention don't watch porn. This goes without saying,
Yeah. Good.
Like I still do self-pleasure, but I don't ejaculate, and I do the self-pleasure in terms of feeling how great it is to pleasure myself.
Yeah.
And I celebrate it, and it's really beautiful. And I'm also practicing the containment,
Yeah.
The self-pleasure is a real big key to being a better lover.
Yeah. It's like how you wank is how you make love, basically.
Exactly.
So if you, with your example of like boys or grown men who are watching like super violent, super fast and very like uncontained, the sexual energy in porn, you're almost cementing your like something into your subconscious that is basically making you a horrific person to make love to as a woman.
Yeah.
Because you're like coming with everything that a woman does not need to have pleasure with you,
Yeah.
So you're conditioning yourself in this really intense way. And when sexual energy is when there's sexual energy running in the body, aka we're aroused, our brain, our neuroplasticity is more flexible. So we basically have higher neuroplasticity. That means what you do, think about, watch, and act out while you're aroused is really changing your brain and
Yeah.
like. And that's where there's so much opportunity missed, because there is so much power in that moment to shape your reality and yourself when you're aroused. So if you're self-pleasuring without porn and you're focusing on your body and your pleasure and maybe even something you want to achieve or the next step for you and your growth, you're fueling that like fast track style.
Yeah, you know, the beauty of sex magic.
Yeah.
And the beauty of, you don't even need to call it sex magic. You can just call it like, you know, confidence boost 101. You know, have self-pleasure. And it's difficult. This is where it's really difficult. And yeah, it's breaking through that shame, breaking through that guilt. You know, when I talk about with men about look at your penis, massage your penis,
Yeah.
tell it how much you love it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, whoa, this
Yeah.
is quite edgy. But then this is also how you build a beautiful relationship. You know, and this beautiful relationship is how you, without a better term, penetrate the world with love.
Yeah.
Is like having pride over your lingam and
Yeah.
being like, when I am aroused, it's good.
Yeah.
When I'm aroused and inside my partner, I'm healing.
Yeah.
And we're creating love.
Yeah.
Instead of taking and not creating love.
And as you said with the poles, right? Like the lingam being like an energetic plus and the heart an energetic minus in the body. And for the women, there's the energetic minus in the yoni, also as a form, and then the energetic plus is the heart, the breasts, how we nurture and how we pour love into the world with our breasts and from this heart space. So that means the heart is delicate and receptive in the men, and the yoni is delicate and receptive. And whatever you're charging this penis with, is we're receiving that. So if a man approaches us and there's so much subconscious shame, and as you said, like maybe even hate towards their penis, or maybe like this icky feeling of, you know, not being in control of desire, feeling that desire is shameful, we're going to feel it. If we're being penetrated with a penis that's full of shame, rather than you're saying, you know, tell your penis you love him. Like we're absorbing this shame into our womb.
Yeah.
And many women feel it afterwards. If a man is like taken by his just primal lust and just like goes for it and doesn't stay in the heart, there's no connection with the women in that moment. And then he ejaculates. It's like the women will feel exactly that primal urge and that like shamefulness from the man. Like she will feel it in her body and it will feel really uncomfortable for her.
Yeah.
And she will not feel honored. She will not feel adored. She will not feel like a queen. She will feel used.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, but I feel like I need to defend the men out here because it's not their fault that they feel shame, because there's a lot of issues around this society that puts shame onto people.
Yes, that's true.
And so, yeah, it is, I suppose, their responsibility to try and clear that shame and trying to work through it. But this is really entrenched if it's been, you know, absorbed since childhood, if it's then, you know, been part within school. You know, these are deep feelings, especially all the feelings attached to our root chakra, our second chakra. They really can be really entrenched.
Yeah. And it's like a cycle where it goes kind of ping pong, right? Because if I'm a mother who experienced sexual abuse and I'm raising a boy, and eventually that boy with a penis, you know, has erections and it's like becomes a sexual being, there will be a part of me that will reject him for that. And it's like subconsciously, there are so many levels where I guess men and women are experiencing sexuality and sexual energy as something dangerous or dirty or bad.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it feels so healing when we reframe our sexual energy as something sacred.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's, again, coming into the Taoist and Tantric perspective. And that's how I practice semen retention. And that's how I teach semen retention. And yeah, you can take the practices and use them and be really good at practicing semen retention on a physical level. But when you go that extra bit further and realize that, hey, I'm bringing this energy up to my heart, and then I'm also bringing this energy up to the ether, giving it to the universe, you then refine this primal sexual energy into this more, you sublimate this energy into something that can be given out and devoted to the higher consciousness and to higher good.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you receive energy as well.
Yeah.
It's like I give some and I receive some, all through this beautiful energy that comes from our sex center.
Yeah, it's like an altar and a prayer, right? You're sending that energy, like the one thing that makes us connected to the energy of creation is our sexual energy, and the energy of creation is the divine, right? Is source, if you want to call it God, right? But I like source.
Yeah, it's good. And I think this is when I talk about spirit a lot, it kind of maybe people put up defenses, and rightly so. When people talk about things that are like spiritual, you should put up defenses, because there's been a lot of history where people have exploited these kind of things for their own power.
Yeah.
But the beautiful thing about Taoism and Tantra essentially is they're not religions. They're a particular theology, or they're a particular like philosophy almost.
Yeah.
That
philosophy.
that say how things might work if you believe in it. So Taoism in itself is kind of, well, it's just the way of nature.
Yeah.
It's looking at how energy moves amongst everywhere.
Yeah.
And inside you.
Yeah.
And to have this ability to create energy within you and then distribute it to the universe and receive from the universe is incredibly powerful. And that's why I love particular essence of Taoism, because this sexual energy that's inside us is inside nature.
Yeah.
So when you go and walk in a forest and it's spring and everything's coming alive and you feel so peaceful and so joyful, you're essentially just loving arousal energy of nature.
Yeah.
It's
force.
life force. It's,
Yeah.
it's not like ravishing nature. It's like the arousal nature of things coming alive.
Yeah.
And blossoming, opening up, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. This smells good. I feel relaxed. I feel alive. And that's the energy that's within us.
Yeah.
And the problem is, it's just been compounded with so many levels of shame and so much victims of control by mainly men who want to dominate.
Yeah. So for the men listening right now, what would you recommend to them if they want to start the path of moving their sexual energy to their heart?
Well, the first thing is I would monitor your relationship with ejaculation. Just get a diary, or if you don't do diaries, don't bother with a diary. Just think about it and
Become aware. Yeah.
Become aware. You know what I mean? It's easy to say get a journal, but journaling actually can be quite difficult, especially for guys. And so go a few days without ejaculating, and then when you want to do, and notice how you feel afterwards. Notice how you feel before, notice how you feel afterwards. Do you feel tired? If you do it right before bed, how do you wake up? Can you do physical exercise? Notice your mood. Notice if you feel connected. Notice whether you feel a bit nervous and you don't know why you feel nervous. And then just consider that the impact of that ejaculation is on you. And just begin to start investigating how it feels within your body.
Yeah.
And if you notice certain things, then as a scientific experiment, remove that variable, remove the ejaculation and see how that works. So the next week, try not to ejaculate and see how much energy you have. See your mood, notice your mood, and begin to put 1 and 2 together.
Yeah.
Because this relationship or this investigation will create the foundation in which you do it.
Yeah.
So for me,
why.
this your why. For me, ejaculation is great. I'm not against it, because it's part of our human experience, and I'm not shunning anything that's part of our natural sexual experience. I do view it as something geared towards babies, and I do view it as something really special and sacred that should be kept for when you really want to do it. So special occasions or something like that. And so where was I going with that?
That's how you really
That's
look at
your
the
why.
relationship.
Yeah. And so if you don't have that why, then you'll probably just fall back into the old way of doing things where you don't see the reason to do it.
Yeah. Why would you do it if it feels so good?
If it feels so good.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't ejaculate because I know it will make me feel shit.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
And that's the big reason.
Yeah.
And it'll make me feel less connected. And then I'm really into the practice, into circulating the energy, and I realize how good it makes me feel.
Yeah.
And I realize how connected I am.
Yeah.
And I realize how much of a better lover it makes me,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, because a lot of these, challenges that men face when it comes to sexual engagement with their partners can really be helped with semen retention.
Yeah.
Things like erectile dysfunction. If you can't get a hard on, it's because of there's a lot of like psychological reasons to it, of course. There's also a lot of physiological reasons to it in terms of blood flow, in terms of building up the capacity of your sexual muscles to pump more blood and to move more energy.
Yeah.
The restriction of blood flow is usually a blockage of energetics.
Yeah.
And so when you're practicing testicle breathing and you're using your perineum and you're moving your testicles up, you're just like cleaning out the pipes for allow more energy to flow. And this helps with blood flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then if you're not ejaculating, I speak to some men and they have difficulties with getting a hard on, and I ask them, how many times are you wanking?
Yeah.
And they're like, a few times a week.
Yeah.
Like, just stop.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done.
That's the
of course.
problem, right?
Like, it's easier said than done. And that's where a lot of my other work comes in, because I work with men to help remove the challenges in their lives where they use ejaculations to soothe.
Yeah.
So
it's like a dummy.
It's a lot of it's stress related, a lot of it's trauma related, a lot of it's shame related. And this is where I use practices from breathwork for trauma release and emotional release to help them release these things, so they're not using ejaculation to make them feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also like you're saying, just stop, right? But we're all aware that the real big challenge here is that no one has ever taught us to raise our sexual energy away from the primal urge into more love or into more creativity, right?
Yeah.
We haven't been taught anywhere ever. We just have a whole catalog of not very helpful examples.
Yeah.
Porn. So for a man who is maybe aware that there is an addictive pattern, and they're like feeling even more shame about it because they're like, oh my God, I'm not even really feeling in control of how much porn I watch. And they realize it makes them feel shit. There's still this big challenge of like, how can I shift the habit, and then though how can I learn to do it differently, right?
Yeah. And so that's a big part of that is, when you're dealing with habits you don't like, you can call them addictions.
Yeah.
It's difficult sometimes to go cold turkey, and so you have to find alternatives, to kind of healthier alternatives to help you wean off these things. And so when I work with guys, and I do this myself, is what's your self-pleasure program like? I'm into Tantra, I'm into Taoist practices, I'm into healthy sexual relationships. So I'm not saying stop wanking. I'm just saying try another way to pleasure yourself.
Yeah.
And pleasure yourself, and this is where Tantra comes in. Pleasure yourself with love and affection. And, if you feel like you really want to masturbate with porn and ejaculate, try without porn.
Yeah.
And still ejaculate. But still just watch the whole process. You might find yourself all in your head in fantasy. That's okay. Because you're slowly chipping away at a huge amount of social conditioning that has led you into this position. And then you realize, okay, next time I'm going to do it with less fantasy.
Yeah.
And you just get more and more. And then maybe after 3 weeks, you realize, hey, I'm not even ejaculating at all. I'm just practicing edging. I'm just going right to the edge and using these new breathing control mechanisms. And I'm just cultivating that energy and moving it back up into my heart. And you realize what a massive success that is.
Yeah, how that feels.
And how good you feel. A lot of people that I work with in terms of porn, they're like, wow, I just feel so much better.
Yeah.
I'm like in work, speaking to people. I'm at social events, cracking jokes,
Yeah.
and feel confident.
And I'm not scared to approach this woman that I find really hot.
No,
I'm
exactly.
not, because I'm containing that desire.
Yeah.
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 And if we have a lot of sexual energy in our body and cultivating a lot of sexual energy and containing it, it's really attractive for women.
For sure. People
For everyone, really.
recognize
It's
it.
a magnet, you're a
People
magnet.
recognize it.
Yeah.
Because the energetics of things are powerful.
Yeah.
When you step into the space and you feel like, you kind of got this like posture and you feel the energy in your core,
Yeah.
it's stable.
Yeah.
And that stability is safety. And people are attracted to that because they know it's grounded. Oh, that guy was so grounded. That girl was so grounded. It's like, yeah, people really like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really beautiful. Another side of it is guys can have much better pleasure. We can experience much more pleasure.
Yeah.
When you're making love to your partner and she's having an orgasm and it's like, looks like she's traveling multiple dimensions on a liquid magic carpet of pure bliss. And you're like, wow. And then you ejaculate and you're like, oh, that was like a 4. I think that was another reason. And it's not to do anything about, it's just like, I think ejaculation it's like New Year's Eve. It's a big anticlimax. You put everything into this one night, into this one experience. You pop a few fireworks and then you're like, oh, that's it. I'm done.
Oh, it's so funny.
Where it's more about when you're going slow, when you're taking your time, when you're actually feeling into your body and bodily sensations, when you're moving this energy up to places in your body that you've never really never felt with this orgasmic, bliss, you realize that your whole body can just come alive.
Yeah.
And this is the multi-orgasmicness. This is full body orgasms. And yeah, these are all often like buzzwords in like this, in the sex coaching world.
Yeah,
like,
sounds great, doesn't it? Who wouldn't want to have that?
Who doesn't want that? And it is great. And it's not crazy difficult to achieve. It comes with a lot of redefining what orgasm is, redefining what pleasure is, redefining it.
Yeah.
And once you come with a better definition of what it is for your body, you realize like, wow, I can achieve this pretty quick and it feels great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So semen retention for men is really not only about their vitality, it's really about how they feel and how they make love, even, at the end of the day. So I think I just wish for every man to have this access to this knowledge, because in a way we're set up for failure by the media and by the by pornography and things that we've learned. And many people have this feeling of there's more. This can't be it.
Yeah.
It's like you don't even have to have premature or delayed ejaculation or any of those erectile dysfunctions. You just might be sitting there being like, I know there's more to this thing called sex than what I'm currently experiencing. And I love when people come to me with that feeling, because it's like, yeah, you're right. There is more. Let's go.
Yeah. And it takes a little bit of discipline and it takes a little bit of practice. And it, at the beginning and still throughout, it does take that like, oh, I wouldn't mind ejaculating. And it takes a little bit of, no, focus on the sensation, just removing it from the table. And as I find as well, is when I'm removing it completely from the situation, I'm just so much more present. I'm not chasing anything. I'm just exploring. There's so much curiousness. And I think it's improved our lovemaking quite considerably.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. Yeah, it's just a powerful energy to have. And this energy is inside us.
Yeah.
And it's there.
Yeah.
And it's being created all the time,
Yeah.
and we can use it. We just have to decide not to spill it all the time. And a good semen retention program is not, it doesn't mean that you have to never ejaculate again.
Mm-mm.
You can, ejaculate once every 2 weeks. That's still semen retention.
Even once a week, right? If
Even-
you've
yeah.
been, it depends where you started and just how okay you are with resting after you ejaculate.
Yeah.
Really giving yourself that time to replenish that energy.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. So, are you going to contain your semen?
Well, that's another episode.
That is another episode. You don't have any semen, though. Yeah. So, thanks for this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we will talk about something else next time. No?
I'm sure we will talk about something.
Let's talk about something else next time.
Yeah, let's.
Or maybe we'll talk about semen retention again.
Mm.
Maybe not. We kind of went into the topic of ravishing, polarity, Shakti and Shiva quite a bit in this episode.
It's all interconnected, baby.
It's all interconnected, baby. Exactly. Thanks very much. Let's see you next time.
See you next time.